Welcome back. This is Kevin Johnson of Leverage Consulting, and I am bringing you the Resilient Entrepreneur Podcast number 28. And we're going to start this podcast out with a quote that I'm sure some of you have heard before. But before I do that, I want to preface it with something that I do as a little bit of an opening or a get to know me with clients or when I speak at engagements. And that is, I usually ask people, who do you listen to or who do you like that is an inspirational speaker? And I get different answers on things. And I will say I do like people who have the ability to get clients or groups of people wound up and interested and basically motivated. And I do work to do the same thing. However, I don't put myself out there that way. The way I put myself out there is that I am an instigational speaker, not so much of a inspirational speaker. And the reason is I like to see things done. I like to see things accomplished. I like to see the needle move because in the end, it makes my clients happy. I know you are happy. And quite honestly, for me, I like to see my clients get results. They're happy, their teams are happy, and in the end, everybody's happy, everybody wins. So, with that being said, this podcast might be a little bit instigational, and that's the purpose. I like, as my clients know, I like getting rid of the eggshells, I like kicking the pink elephants, I like identifying the purple squirrels and all these different things. And yes, for those of you who don't know me, you might wonder, what does all that stuff mean? Well, you might find out later in a different podcast, but point is, we identify and talk about the things that usually prevent us from getting the results. And in doing that, some of you may have heard a quote or saying that it is better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. And that is one of the things that when I was young, I learned and I was told that you have 2 ears and 1 mouth and you should use them in that ratio. And it sounds a little harsh, might make some of you smile. But the point of it is we're all typically better off by listening more than we are talking. And usually when we're listening, we're learning, we're understanding. And with this, we need to, before we jump into when we jump into this conversation or this podcast, we have to understand that people are different, and there are people that I know who are think to talk type personalities, and then there are people out there who are a talk to think type personality. And to contrast them, you may have someone who is a talk to think personality. You know these people, they are the ones that may seem like they talk a lot. And they may be all over the board. They may seem like they're just aimlessly talking, but it's all the stuff that's going on inside their brain. And it's their way of going from point A to point B. And it may seem messy. And that's okay, because that's how they process information and that's how they go from point A to point B. And conversely, you have people who are more of a think to talk type personality, and they're the ones that may sit in the corner very quietly, and you may think nothing is going on. You may believe that they're actually cold and judging, or they're just sitting back and disinterested. But in fact, that person might be the type that is actually sitting over there processing everything in silence. And you know these people because they'll sit there very quietly and then suddenly they open their mouth and it's nothing but gold, nothing but solutions and information. Both are awesome. It is not that one is better than the other. The point is that we have to understand that there's not one way to process information, and we have to understand that people are different. And once you start understanding that people, not everyone is like you, because the 2 types of personalities that I contrasted, and it's not that there's only 2 types, but there are 2 primary ways for a lot of people to actually articulate and participate in problem solving. And in doing that, you may see this in yourself, your family members, your team members, people you meet out in when you're shopping or the restaurant. When you think about the quote that I just read, it is better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. And some of you may believe that the statement means shut up. And that's not really, in my view, the point of this. The point is that we actually listen to understand. We listen to understand the other person's viewpoints, where they're coming from. And I think in today's environment, many of you would agree that we need more of that. And this is not, we probably are all thinking politically right now when you're listening to this, but that's where we may see it the most right now. But as you know, there are 3 topics we never talk about. One of them would be politics. So when we think about this quote, again, you may think that this is all about you zipping it up, staying quiet, and just listening to the other people, and that's not the case. We are talking about listening to understand. And when you start to listen to understand, it's amazing what you can uncover and what you can learn, because it may be that you don't even agree with the other person. That too is okay. You don't have to agree with other people, but seeing things from a different viewpoint may change how you approach things. It may change how you decide to move forward in trying to accomplish a goal. It may change a number of different things, but you have to understand. And really, for you to make progress with individuals or groups, oftentimes you have to make sure they feel like they have even been heard. So it may be that, again, listening will achieve the goal of just making sure the other folks feel like they've been heard, because that in itself can be an area where people will just dig their heels in and they have zero interest in listening to you. Your idea might be absolutely the best. It might be literally the best idea going. It's so good, there is not another option. But if you don't get the other group to feel like they've been heard, they're not going to listen to you. They have zero interest in actually moving forward with your idea. If we separate those 2 groups, and let's first talk about the ones who need to talk to think, then they may need to be a little bit more deliberate and say, let me talk this out for a minute. And that way, you don't feel, those of you who work that way, you don't feel like you are babbling on, you're not apologizing for yourself, you're not feeling weird about talking something through. Just be deliberate and say, you know what, give me a minute, let's talk this through for a second. And that in itself, you may arrive at that point A to point B considerably faster. And conversely, we have folks that are the think to talk type, and they need to be more deliberate with their questions. And it's an area where I'm actually in that group. As much speaking as I do and talking to clients, I am actually one that I think to talk. And I have learned over the years that I need to be more deliberate in asking questions, and I need to be more deliberate in making sure other people feel like they've been heard. And I'm sure I am not, in fact, I know I'm not the only one with that. So in asking the questions, you may even already know the answer to the question. But again, you're making the other party feel like they've been heard, and you're making the other party feel like they're part of it. So if we go back to the end of the quote where it talks about removing all doubt, what that really is getting to is working to eliminate the emotional response to certain things. And we all have it. If someone cuts you off in traffic, someone says something that's unpleasant to you, there are things that's going to instigate a emotional response from really pretty much anyone. And we're looking to eliminate those, or eliminate as a goal, but realistically minimizing the number of emotional responses we have to things, asking more questions, getting a more fundamental understanding, because that in itself, as I said earlier, listening is a superpower. And the more listening you do, the better understanding you have of things, the better the results that you and your team will get in the next week, month, year, and in the future. So with that being said, that was my instigational podcast for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I have some other ones that are coming up shortly about goals, which I'm sure many of you will be very, very interested in. And it's something that you should be working on now for next year. So as I said, this is Kevin Johnson of Leverage Consulting, and that was your Resilient Entrepreneur podcast number 28.